me know when you're ready.
I'm ready, man.
Ready?
Oh, hold on. Before we do this, go out there and wave to the deal.
Okay.
So that we make sure we get as much time outside. Yeah, you're good. Okay. Sorry. Now we're good. Break.
Oh, that's good.
Funny. I think it'll go like, I don't know. I have no idea. I'm ready.
3, 2, 1, break. Welcome back to the Undefeated, Unscripted Defining Moments Podcast. Bryan Bedford, welcome back.
Thanks, brother.
The
Happy to be here.
CEO, Managing Director of Bedford Agency.
Yeah.
Let's recap our audience about you and the agency.
Well, I think, from the last time we met, a lot has happened in the world of college athletics and certainly college sports is in a massive amount of transformation right now.
Yeah.
We've been at this about 5 years and with a really simple mission of just trying to help kids and families make the college recruiting process easier. And we've had a lot of success doing that. I remember starting this out with really kind of simple intentions, which is no business cards, no plan. I think I went to Vistaprint and just, bought 100 business cards and started a business. But it was really around how can we transition this? My background is as a Division I, Division II recruiting director. And we've been on this journey for 5 years now, trying to slowly work through the process with a lot of kids that have wanted that kind of high touch way to engage with us. And we've got a lot of results now where kids have literally they're going to places all over the country, which is awesome. Mm-hmm. And now we're at a point now where we feel like, things are changing. You're seeing transfer policies change. You're seeing name, image, and likeness. You're seeing COVID, super seniors, all that stuff is really changing. It's a lot to absorb if you're a parent right now. So, it's been fun, but the agency has grown kind of systematically over the last 5 years. I always tell people, and I don't mean this disrespectful to anybody, but actually COVID created a lot of transformation, just a way that people consume media, consume things. It changed a bunch of different things, the way that people engaged in camps or visits. We went 15 months without kids being able to go see a coach. I mean, just imagine that. Yeah. So that created a lot of disruption. And for our business, I think it needed some disruption, and we're hopefully trying to kind of capitalize on that a little bit.
Yeah. You mentioned recruiting expertise. What's your background in the recruiting world? I know that the last time we spoke about it was with, I believe it was TCU, and then also with the quote unquote Oklahoma City 89ers at that time. Yeah. But fill us in on that.
Sure. Yeah. So it's interesting because I kind of feel like now I'm able to kind of go back to doing some of the things that I really started out when I was 21. So to give you kind of the longer story of it, I got my first director of recruiting job when I was 21 years old.
Wow.
So in May of 1999, at the time, President Lauren Gresham at Southern Nazarene University set me and a couple of others down and said, we're going to start a college football program. And I was part of a short list of guys that were asked to kind of lead that. And we had to go get a team ready in 15 months to play their first college football game. So that was back when it was a little passé to get transfers and all these different things. And so we had to go literally sign upwards of 300 kids in about 3 signing classes right out of the gate, which you really don't have an opportunity to do that very often.
Right.
So we had a red shirt class that came in. We took some kids at the mid-semester. Then we had a normal signing class. Then we had, retention. We had to think about how we were going to keep them and stack our classes together and all those kinds of things. And so that kind of, was the beginnings of my career. Now, before that, did work some time in professional baseball, so I've certainly got a baseball background as well. But having that deep hands-on experience at kind of a small college, you got to do everything. You're compliance director, you're admissions, you're doing the whole bit. And then I took that expertise and went to TCU, and we've seen what they've done in the Big 12 now and so forth. But went in the Rose Bowl in the mid 2020 and so forth. So went to TCU and was director of recruiting for a couple seasons there, and got a lot of infrastructure and systems and process and so forth kind of built that wasn't in place. And then I went into kind of the sports tech field and was part of a company that was doing video and analysis and was building a recruiting and scouting business, and actually helped them kind of incubate a recruiting and scouting business, which a lot of programs like Oklahoma and Alabama and so forth use today,
right,
where they actually outsource some of the reporting and early evaluation. So those staffs have to work within a finite set of rules and structure that the NCAA provides, but they can go outside of those with some third parties, and we were building some services to kind of fill that gap. So that is a lot of recruiting, and in the middle of that, it was always the friends and family that would call and say, little Johnny or little Susie wants to try to play soccer or volleyball or football or baseball in college, and how does the process work? Yeah. So I was always kind of getting asked those questions along the way, and helped several families that were close personal friends go to college. And then along the way, I was just like, I had a friend of mine that said, you've helped us so much, you should really make something out of this. And at that point in time, it was like, well, really? And he's like, yeah, I mean, I know you and I still would have paid you. Yeah. And I'm like, well, thank you for the backhanded compliment, but, do you really think we can do it? And they're like, man, there's just got to be a better way to do this. So we're trying to capitalize on that and that experience that you're asking about. And then also just being able to watch recruiting change, right? The influx of social media, the influx of the transfer portal. Now things like name, image, and likeness, and what that's going to do and how that's going to evolve things. So for me, it's a hobby that has now turned into, it started as a profession, moved to a hobby. It's back to a profession, if that makes sense. Yeah. But it's been, I always think of recruiting as also an element of sales. And so I've done a lot of sales in my career. Yeah. So for me, now I look back and I'm like, well, I'm not really an old guy, but it's like 25 years in and around the recruiting space. So that either gives me some gray hair on my chin or head, or less hair, whatever the analogy is. But the reality is, there's wisdom now that you can kind of discern from that. So that's a little bit of my background.
That's cool. So I agree with the wisdom. I don't see any gray hair, so you're doing well there.
There's a few in there. Don't get me wrong.
You talked about little Johnny and little Susie. I actually did field some questions from our listeners, our audience, and some friends. And these are a list of questions, but we'll get to those in a little bit.
Okay. Hide the questions.
Yeah.
I have not seen these questions. These are unprompted.
Nope, that's right. So I'm curious, the analytics approach is this world is full of data, full of science, full of analytics, and how have you been able to compile that and help these student athletes and parents?
Yeah. So when we think about analytics, I think the important distinction is there's kind of two different sides of it, right? And so the first is the way that schools analyze the needs of their programs is ever evolving. So they've very much gotten into predictive analytics. They know injuries. They understand height and weight. They understand measurables. They understand lots of things that go into this. Just like an NFL or an NBA team would do it, colleges have gotten much more sophisticated over the last 20 years or so. And so for every family that's like, well, why isn't my 5'10" and 250-pound lineman getting recruited at, Alabama? Well, there's a reason for that, because the analytics show that you've got to be a certain, this is what it takes to perform well, to compete at a national level, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't mean that that kid can't play somewhere else. He's just not going to play at Alabama, as an example, right? So those teams have gotten much more sophisticated, and that is ever evolving too, as they now think about how do they split up their scholarships for kids that are high school kids, junior college kids, transfer kids. So that mix and how they look at that mix is ever evolving. On our side, we look at it, a little bit differently, in the sense that now we're also then looking at, what are the trend lines that we're seeing? So how, maybe not the analytics of a specific sport and measurables and things like that, like a coach would look at it, but we're looking at trends that impact behavior of a recruit. So I'll give you an example. Right now, because of COVID, many schools were allowing kids to come back for an additional year of eligibility. We're also seeing an influx of transfers. So what we're telling our parents is that over the next 2 recruiting classes, you should expect the number of available scholarships for a high school recruit to decrease by about 25%. Okay, just to hedge a little bit. I mean, everybody should just be eyes wide open that the mixture of how people are building their rosters, it's changing. It's changing more dramatically right now than it ever has. So we also have data in different states where we can look at the percentages or probability of a certain player, and those have changed over time, right? We're seeing college football, while it's really strong in the South with the SEC, the other element of you're seeing percentages of probability of players in that geographic target actually increase significantly. So like states like Georgia and South Carolina, who 20 years ago were not perceived as hotbeds in recruiting. Now those two states, as an example, they would rival a Ohio, Texas, California, and Florida as far as percentages. 20 years ago, that didn't exist. And again, those are just examples. That's where, when we think about what we've done as an advisor, we're really looking at it. So it's, again, my hobby that's now turned into profession. And like, I research this, I look at these kinds of things, because it does give you an understanding of what to tell a parent, how to set the right level of expectations. So those have been things that, as we think about kind of packaging up and productizing things, we're always thinking about how do we make sense of all that data that's out there.
Yeah. And it's not just football.
No.
It's a wide variety of sports.
I mean, I'll give you a good example right now. In the 2020-2021 school year, okay, there are 299 baseball programs at the Division I level. Okay, so let's just round it up and say 300 baseball programs in Division I. Would you like to take a guess at how many kids transferred in Division I baseball?
Oh, man. I don't know, 60?
Not even close.
More, or
2,800.
What?
Okay. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. So that tells me a couple of things. One, they're oversigning high school kids, or they're oversigning. So they're taking kids that they're kind of taking a flyer on. If the kid develops, if he gets stronger, if his arm gets more developed, whatever it is, we're going to oversign by a couple when he probably really shouldn't be one of our guys to begin with. That's what it tells me, the first thing. Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay. The second thing is that, kids and parents didn't do their diligence on the front end about the needs of those programs.
Yeah.
How many pitchers do they have returning? How many are going into the draft? How many mid-year kids are they taking, or JUCO kids are they taking over? Do they know? Did they ask the questions? Sometimes they may get an answer at a certain time. The dynamics change, right?
Yeah.
But those are all implications of you've got to be really smart and eyes wide open. If you look at, other sports, right? You've got kids that might be playing women's soccer at Florida State, and they transfer into Alabama.
Yeah.
And so that then that has implications downstream, right? So every sport does that. Now you see in college basketball, I think it's 1 in 3 kids have transferred in college basketball.
3 kids.
So but it also is a indictment, though, on a little bit of our society too.
Sure.
Because, gone are the days of, little Johnny plays Little League or plays youth, and then he gets onto an elite, he goes to high school. Now you've got the travel ball stuff. You've got the travel soccer. You've got the travel wrestling. You've got the elite peewee frisbee. You've got whatever, right? And then it's, I want to play. I got a weekend invite to go play in this volleyball tournament, but it's not really my club, but I can go play just a weekend, and it's like a test drive. Yeah. And it's all this stuff. So we've kind of created this, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So when we look at what do you expect a kid to do?
Sure.
It's like, you moved him from a team in peewee because you didn't think he was playing because he wasn't the fastest kid.
Yeah.
He wasn't getting the ball enough when he was 10, and then you move teams. Well, what do you think that kid? How do you think that kid's behavior is going to be when he's 20?
True.
So, don't get me started on that. That's a whole rat hole of youth athletics. But we've kind of created an epidemic here, and so when people are like, "Well, I don't like pro sports because I don't know who's on my team anymore." Well, guess what? That's now happening in college because we've created so much freedom that I think it's maybe kind of gotten a little bit overboard, but genie's out of the bottle, so we got to deal with it now. But it's a little messy, that's for sure.
It's going to be interesting. I think that's a great analogy. Genie's out of the bottle. So what we're going to do? How are you going to help the genie back in a little bit, or how can you change the scope? Or leads to my question is, I get 60. You said 2,800 out of 300 NCAA Division I baseball teams. So all these analytics that you're doing, is there a type of analytics where it's like maybe a psychology, where it gets into a fringe player, why these players are leaving, and et cetera, besides the depth chart of pitching?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think schools are doing that. I mean, where they're looking at the fit, and they're truly trying to do kind of more personality testing, and they're really, I mean, a lot of what they're doing, it's like an extended job interview in the recruiting process.
Sure.
They're looking at measurables and fit, and they've got a profile for every position that they're looking at, and they're trying to kind of fit, and they want to spend as much time with kids as they possibly can, because that eliminates some of that transfer. The other part that and I think it'll be really interesting, over the next couple of years, is that if you think about the class of kids that are getting ready to go to school as freshmen this fall, those kids, the primary window from when they got recruited, they could not step foot on campuses because of coronavirus. They didn't even meet their coaches in person.
Wow.
They did all of their recruiting over, a virtual call.
Yeah.
So if you think that number is bad now, that number probably increases another 10%, because now you're going to have a whole bunch of kids that are on campus that are like, what? This is not what I thought. Yeah. This is not what it looked like on the computer screen.
Sure.
The other part is, I also think that this year the numbers are interesting because I just think that 2020, 2021 was tough for a lot of people. So, kids that are 18 to 21 are not immune to mental health issues and everything else that go into that. And so when you're, in Rhode Island playing soccer and, quasi-quarantined or wearing a mask or doing any of that stuff, that's hard on anyone, let alone that age group where, you're dealing with mental maturity and things like that that's going on. So it'll be interesting to kind of see that. I mean, I think you'll look back and it'll be interesting to see, was this kind of a compelling event in the industry? I don't know what that'll look like. We try to just make sense of the madness kind of real time, but certainly try to give our kids kind of the opportunity to understand that sometimes, a certain level isn't necessarily, it's about fit. And so, you need to be focused on fit rather than level. And because sometimes those can be, like a kid that might be getting recruited as a low end Division I soccer or baseball or whatever, and a kid who's and that same kid, if he's getting recruited at the high end of Division II, it might be better for him to go to a Division II school. He might play more. The roster might be more manageable. So I really am a big believer in let's focus on fit rather than just chasing it. But it's hard. I mean, because, kids are, we've created a society where they're used to watching certain things on Saturday afternoons on ESPN, and that's a hard ship to turn around or adjust.
Yeah, it's true. You talked a lot about 2020 and then going into 2021. Personal question, what has 2020 taught you? What have you learned from it?
Yeah, I mean, our business grew substantially in 2020. So I look at it and go, be digitally savvy. You can do this. Be ready to pivot with your businesses. focus on family, focus on, quality time there. And then as we get into 2021, I mean, we're getting ready to, we're on the cusp of new products and services, which I think we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Yeah.
And that's been exciting. And so what we use the opportunity in that time of the last year is really reinvent and think about what could that look like? Mm-hmm. What's that new experience? What are the needs of the market? And not just rest on our laurels and say, hey, we grew by 300% in 2020,
right,
but how do we grow another 300-400% in the future?
Sure.
And what's that going to take to do that?
Yeah.
And so we've used it as an opportunity to kind of double down. And I would just say that's kind of my message to people is like some good old hustle, good old hard work, that undefeated attitude you like to talk about. Like you can do some stuff, but you can't just sit back. I mean, you got to get after it. And so I think that being balanced through that is certainly key, but having like an opportunity to really push when it's tough. Like I think that there's something kind of embedded in that. So that's kind of the mentality I've tried to take is just like, let's push through this. Like we've gone over one hill, let's push through and go over another couple of hills as quickly as we can, because that's when it gets really fun. That's when that's when we see really like massive scale in the business.
Yeah. I remember sending you a text over mid last summer, and I was just asking how you're doing through everything, and you said, great, man, but I got big things coming, brother. So is this the big thing? Because I don't know what the big thing is.
Yeah, I mean, we've been working on. I mean, so how we use 2020 and 2021 is really an opportunity to really think about the offering. So for the first 5 years, the Bedford Agency had been just, hey, we're going to help kids, and it's just going to be you're part of the family. It's just we do this like advisory service practice, and we built kind of a social following and all this kind of stuff that's happened. But we realized that works for kids and parents that want a really intimate, high-touch engagement from us. They want our expertise. They want to be able to phone a friend. They want a dedicated portal. They want an evaluation. They want all those kinds of things. But we also realize that the need to educate and empower requires also our ability to think about how we scale this business too. And so we're going to continue to do this. We're going to rebrand kind of our high-touch engagement model to Recruit Route Elite. Nice. But we're going to take a model which is a true subscription, an annual subscription, and call that Recruit Route. So we've got some swag on the board here, but Recruit Route is our brand to kind of reach the masses. Okay. So it's a lighter touch. It's digitally delivered. It's heavily focused on tools, and we provide that to our other kids as well for Elite. But the goal is, can we do more? Can we reach more and more kids? We really believe that there's a massive need for education and empowerment. And so that doesn't need to just be limited to kids who can pay a premium. We need to be able to do some of that to a wider swath of kids. So in August of 2021, we've launched Recruit Route and Recruit Route Elite and a partner program to go with it. So we'll have partners who will be reselling Recruit Route and be packaging it up with other systems and products and teaching. And that could be a club, that could be a gym owner, that could be a content company, a media rights holder, that could be anyone selling a product or service into the youth space where they want to bring recruiting into what they're doing, could be a partner. And we already have a bunch of those that have already signed up. So it's exciting. And that's really cool to kind of think about our brand that way. And then the Bedford Agency will just still be kind of the holding company. And then we envision over the next 12 to 18 months, we probably have a series of 4 or 5 products under kind of our product umbrella. And it'll all kind of have this look and feel of Recruit Route, but we'll take that out to market in the coming days, whether it be video, whether it be a product for the transfer portal, whether it be a deeper product into NIL. And Recruit Route and Recruit Route Elite will we'll position them again as kind of empowerment and education fundamentally is kind of the why. And then sitting underneath that will be things like expert workshops, content that we'll deliver to them, some tools to communicate, build micro websites, a digital recruiting checklist, email communication, and then our content news library will include information on recruiting, but also information on name, image, and likeness. So we're trying to really think about kind of the evolution of recruiting and NIL, and how do we help foster this next generation of kids. So that's certainly exciting, and that's why we've been kind of using this time. That's why that text last year, I could kind of feel it. It did take me a little bit of time to kind of package it and work through kind of the messaging and tone and how we want to do it and kind of the model, both economically and partners. But now it's here. Yeah. And it's pretty exciting for us.
I could see this being used, and I coached boys competitive soccer for a long time, so I feel like this is the club, quote unquote clubs, could reach out to
clubs, coaches, booster clubs, school districts, again, rights holders, content company. We have all those people that have reached out or are partners today. So a club could say, hey, you're already paying an annual fee for club soccer. And the club could just, package a recruit route as part of their deliverable and go get, 50 or 100 or however many kids are part of their club and just package it there. And then we do it where it's a rev share to where the club can make money or they can not. It just depends on what they want to do. But there's lots of different models that are part of it. So it's exciting. And that is one of the models that we definitely see that's out there for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Because it's so competitive out there with all these club traveling teams.
They want to see what can they do that's different than their competition that's out there.
Yeah. You're a really genuine guy. So my question then is, if I had a 8th grader and little Johnny, for instance, wants to go and dive into a competitive world and wants to go play Division I soccer, and you have these two recruit route elite, and I just want to kind of test the waters. What's your recommendation and why?
Yeah, so historically, I would have told people in the past, our kids that really need a high touch engagement, they need to be older. They need to be playing elite level travel ball or varsity football as an example, because we don't really have that club kind of version of that. So they need to be playing at a really pretty senior, or not senior in age, but a pretty high level high school before they really need kind of that high touch model, which again, we call recruit route elite. And so that can be, I used, my message in the past was that needs to happen once you've completed varsity level or really like high level ECNL in soccer, kind of like high level high school or an equivalent. But with recruit route, we actually see that as an opportunity to potentially kind of bridge that gap to kids that are maybe even a little bit younger than that.
Gotcha.
So I think that our recruit route kids will be starting in middle school, I would guess, up into maybe to their sophomore year. It's kind of where I think it'll fit. Kids and parents that they need a little bit of information, they need some coaching, they need to get some structure built into it. But they're not really ready for a bunch of high touch workshops and all that kind of stuff. They're not quite ready for that, but they will be down the road. So if I look at the first couple of kids that we've had with recruit route, they've just finished their freshman year. So they're 2024 grads. So I have multiple soccer kids that have come on board as an example, just to kind of speak to that. And, Kentucky and Oklahoma and Texas and different kids that are coming on. A lot of those kids are that 2025, 2024 route for recruit route, whereas my elite kids are going to be more 2023 and 2022s. They're a little bit older. They need a lot more work, which is why there's a little different cost structure to it, because they need a little bit more engagement. They want more information back from me. So it doesn't mean that we might not have a recruit route kid that just follows that methodology through, because it's it's less expensive. And if they want to just do everything kind of digitally as far as their engagement, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
But I actually think that recruit route fits for those kids that are a little younger, and then we can get them kind of over to elite. We'll see how it works.
Yeah. Speaking of, as you're speaking about soccer and SEC and Oklahoma and Florida and Alabama, what does this do? Let's say for Oklahoma, because they're not a men's soccer, they don't have a men's soccer program.
Yep.
But going to the SEC, do they automatically get a men's soccer team, and does that help recruit?
No, I don't think that any of the conference realignment stuff really affects any schools adding or decreasing soccer. I mean, flip it around the other way, which is Oklahoma will be the only school. I think they'll be the only school in the SEC with a wrestling program.
Really?
So you flip it around.
Dang.
So it works both ways. So I don't think it impacts schools increasing or decreasing sports, as an example.
I had no idea.
But it'll change the footprint of where they go and secure talent. And that's always something that, every sport and every program has a different mixture, right? Oklahoma football is an example. We'll just pick on them since we're talking about conference realignment. They found good home in the mid-Atlantic as an example. You want to hit the light?
Yeah, the light.
They've I'll keep talking. They've had good luck in the Mid-Atlantic as an example, and then California, and then certainly Texas and Oklahoma.
Wow.
So every place has a little different kind of mixture of how they do it. So part of it.
That's interesting. I'm excited to get these questions.
Okay.
Because you talk about name, image, and likeliness, and I think that's one of the questions.
Okay.
How does Neil play part in college and even high school athletics?
Yeah, so I think it's TBD on high school. I think what I would say for that is it's really keep the priority the priority. The priority is school, your character, your belief system, and sports. Not necessarily in that order, right? But I mean, keep the priority your priority. If you do that, then you're going to put yourself in a situation where you're going to have some opportunities in the future. For now, keep the priority, which is just be a high school student, be a good person, be a person of faith, bust your butt in the field, all that kind of, and do good academically. If you do that, then you're going to set yourself up. And then, and then as you get closer to college, you need to be thinking about, what do you stand for? What's your brand? Are you an undefeated guy? No, I'm just kidding. But what's your brand, right? As an example. And then I think that, and then it also, you have to think about what's, if that's, again, I think it's part of the equation moving forward. I don't think it's the part of the equation. In most kids, there are a few outliers to that, but in most situations, you'll be when you're picking a school, you're looking at academic, class size, location, playing style, strength coach, coaching staff, dorms, cute boys, pretty girls. That's like being, I'm being real there. Yeah. And then I think you're going to think about, okay, well, if I consider this program, what kinds of tools and processes do they have in place for entrepreneurship, video, social media? A lot of these people are, a lot of these schools are putting in educational and content things to do some of these things. So I think it'll be an element of it from what I've seen so far with the kids that we've had that are going through this. I don't think it's the be all end all, because at the end of the day, again, you come back to, you got to keep the priority, and so I think you just got to be grounded in that. If you do that and you've protected yourself and you're not hasty with anything, then I think you'll be okay. And then I think for the college kids, I would be heavily focused on, I'm going to use a sports analogy, defense rather than offense right now. Defense being protect your intellectual property. Don't sign anything without having counsel or a legal person reviewing it. Make sure you've put money back for taxes, that you've considered implications of receiving money and how that would impact financial aid. So I'd really be heavily focused right now on playing defense. And then you can focus on offense, which is, what do I want to do with my brand? How do I want to represent it? But these guys, and God bless them, that are, my DMs are open, or I'm going to be, I'm going to tweet this out for $500. Like, you need to really understand the expectations and what that means and so forth. The very high end of the market, they're going to be able to do some specific things, but right now the average name, image, and likeness deal that's been registered is about $930. So,
Wow.
If you did 10 of those in a given year, it's $10,000. It's more than what you got right now.
Mm-hmm.
So, but you need to be smart about it.
Yeah.
Because then can you grow that to $30,000, $40,000, $50,000? Okay, maybe. But then you're also getting, let's pretend for a minute and say you're getting $20,000 or $30,000 in Pell Grant.
Yeah.
Did you make so much money that now you're not getting what you anticipated because you had to register that money with the federal income? And so you just have to be really smart. So again, I would think about high school, just focus on playing sports. If you're a super high-end kid, that's a whole different animal. But I mean, that's the 1% of 1%. Then for college, just be smart, have a good defensive strategy first, and then worry about offense. Because once season starts, you're going to have a hard time managing just your regular load, and let alone remembering that on Sunday afternoons you got to tweet something out for Subway. I mean, that's really going to be hard to do. So I think you just got to be really practical about it. But there could be some opportunities, and you've got to be thinking about it, which is why we're trying to set some protocol about how we think through this stuff.
Yeah. I'm curious just to see how this all plays out. Of course, I think this is the first year for.
Yep.
Okay.
Just started July 1st.
July 1st. Yeah. So I'm curious to see how this plays out in the long term, because if you sign to Subway, and we're paying you X amount of whatever it is, and you're tweeting it out and using your social media presence, and then you're not performing up to par on your team, and you're not winning the quote unquote conference championship, which is expected. It's like, I mean, that's got to put some kind of social pressure on you, I would imagine.
Yeah, or let's say that you worked with the local all-state rep and then you transfer to a different school in a different state.
Yeah.
Like, there's all sorts of things that kids are just not even thinking about right now. So that's why I'm like, play defense, get your kind of infrastructure, because now your brand is a business if you're a good enough athlete, or if you have a big enough social following. So you got to really make sure that we tell our kids, like, write a business plan. Just have a plan. Just like you're going to plan for recruiting or competitive sports or your scouting report on the team you're going to play, have a plan. Who do you represent? Are you into hunting? Are you into fishing? Do you like fashion? Do you like the beach? Like, what's your brand represent?
Man.
What are the types of things that you want to be associated with? And if you're not thinking about it, then it's just reactive.
Right.
You don't want to be in a reactive mode. You want to be thoughtful about what you're doing to do, because you could make some really, naive decisions. And I'll give you an example. I had the number one running back in the country. His dad called me. He's going to go to Clemson next year, or he's at Clemson just starting as a freshman. Wow. And it's like, would it be better for him to, take the lease of the Jeep from the local Jeep dealership now, or let's maybe not do that in case in 3 years he wins the Heisman Trophy and Nissan's still the sponsor.
That's a good point.
And so then he doesn't get to be in the Nissan house or the Heisman house ads with Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. So in his mind, he's like, we're going to pass on the lease because we want to bet on the long. So not every kid will be thinking about that way, because a lot of kids will be like, dude, I want to ride the awesome Jeep right now and be pimping out in that going down, sorority alley, right? But if you step back and you really think about what are the opportunities, then the other part of it is, I think there's going to be some kids that stay in college longer. That really good quarterback in college that isn't a pro quarterback, that kid just may stay and just say, hey, I'm just going to stay at Arkansas for another year because I'm going to make more money here.
Yeah.
I'm going to build a business. I'm going to build a brand. I'm going to do it in college. Yeah. I might be a little undersized as a defensive end or a quarterback or whatever it is. I'm just going to stay here in Fayetteville, and I'm going to try to, start the milking process earlier, right? As far as trying to monetize it. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it works. So it's not just those high school kids It's all the way through and how you think through that. So,
Man.
complicated answer to an easy question.
Well, that's actually a really good answer, and I like how you thought long term on the Jeep one, for instance.
Yeah.
I would never thought about that.
Yeah.
Heisman House and Nissan, I forget about that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's why you get paid the big bucks. That's why you're smart and you've got these companies.
Yeah.
I had a question about along the lines of recruiting, but I'll come back to that because this question really intrigues me. What fuels your passion?
Well, I mean, I think genuinely being a good person, being a man of faith, representing those, and then, from a business perspective, helping my team and helping others.
Mm-hmm. How do you think social media has changed the way recruiting works?
Well, I think it's dramatically different. The days of, shipping off a VHS or whatever to someone is, kind of non-existent.
Yeah.
It's flooded the coaches. It's inundated them to where it's almost a tidal wave of content that's coming to them. So I think it's dramatic. Twitter's become like a recruiting platform in a lot of ways. There are people that are trying to change that to build kind of like LinkedIn or Twitter for recruiting. And, it'll be interesting to see how those things evolve. Yeah. But I think it's certainly the number one platform for recruiting right now. We advise our kids, even early, like, ninth grade, like you need to have a Twitter account. Like, it's just important because it's I'll give you a stat that I think is pretty amazing. A recent study said that only 3% of college coaches don't have a Twitter handle.
3%?
3%.
So college football coaches?
Just all coaches in general.
Oh.
3% don't have don't. So it's like, it's a necessary evil right now. Now, some coaches don't really manage it themselves. They've got a GA or a secretary that manages it, but they all have an account for sure.
Wow. How do I protect myself from quote unquote fraudulent companies and or agents that are like wolves?
Well, I think you've got to do your research, right? So, you've got to, just like anything, whether it be, put carpet in your house or refinancing your house or whatever it may be, you got to do your research. So I think, what we've tried to do is publish written statements from parents because I think they're going to be honest with you. And I always tell people that call me, like, if you're not comfortable with what I'm saying to you, which some of them don't know me from anything, I'm happy to give you client references. So I think that that's a big piece of it. And people that hound you, I know how some of these recruiting and agents work, and they're calling me all the time about my kids, and it feels very disingenuous. So we've really tried not to do that. It's a difficult because you want to sell and you want to sell your products, but at the same time, like, if it's good and it stands on its own merit, then people will come to you. And you just got to put your faith in God that it's going to work itself out. So, but I think that, other parent recommendations, and look at the kinds of kids that are attracted to it, that will also tell you something as well. Yeah. And you also have to place value, though, in what you're doing and not be able to lower your standards either. Sure. It's like, this is what we're doing. This is how it works. If this is one thing, when people call me, I always say, this is what we do provide. This is what we don't provide. If you want this, then we're probably not a fit for you. And I will recommend somebody. And I've had people that have called me. I had a guy, I won't get into all the details, but it was heavily on, we want someone who's just going to market and do exposure. And it's like, well, that's only a part of the puzzle. Like, there's so many other things that go into this. So I'd be a little careful with that. But, some people don't want to hear that. Yeah, that's true. Another question is, ask him if he has any kids. And if he does, how old are they, range, and then if they're into sports, how do you separate your knowledge with your profession, your passion versus your own kids? Yeah, so I have two daughters. 17 and 12.
Okay.
And my oldest played some competitive tennis. We've pivoted this year to kind of drama and performing arts, which is awesome. Love it. And my youngest has not really been a little bit of stuff, but nothing like kind of sincere. So for me, that was pretty easy. With our oldest, listen, if it's important to her, then I'm going to make it important to me. If it's not important to her, or if there's a different priority, then we're going to follow that. We're going to let her lead that engagement. So we're going to give her all the opportunities to kind of figure that out. And that's kind of the way we've approached it. But, and I'm not going to say I was perfect through all that, but for the most part, we've tried to be really conscious to say, is this something you want to do? If you want to do it, then we'll do instructions. We'll do private workouts. We'll get you we'll get you a coach. We'll help the booster club, whatever it is, right? If it's important to her, that's the way we try to do it. But don't force anything. It's got to be important to them. And the reality is that about 7% of kids are going to go play sports in college. That's it. Yeah. So get what you need to be getting out of youth sports is teamwork, perseverance, toughness, the hard work, like this life skills. That's what sports develops. That's the way I would be thinking about youth sports and high school sports, because so few of them are actually going to go on. And even out of those, some of those kids, they may go to college for a year or two and they're like, I'm not about that life. Like that's a grind. Yeah. So I just be really, pragmatic about it, but don't try to live vicariously through your kids. Number one, that's not cool. Yeah. And number two, it's really not right. Like it's got to be their deal. Yeah.
I think that's solid, because I feel like there's quite a few parents that do live vicariously through their son or their daughter playing their sport. And I've got to get to D1 or D2 or else I haven't made it. I'm not going to make it. And I think you hit it on the head about teamwork, perseverance.
Yeah, there's only it's 1 or 2% of kids are going to go play at the Division I level in any sport. Yeah. So, the reality is, make sure they're happy, they're well balanced. Yeah. They've got life skills that are going to carry them. Sure. Maybe can they speak? Can they hold a conversation? Can they say yes or no, sir? Can they handle themselves at a kitchen table? I'm like, that's what it's about as a parent. And then, if they happen to be blessed to be a great track athlete or volleyball or whatever it is, that's just icing on the cake, because that at some point that expires. We all grow old and gray-headed and everything else. So you got to think about, that transition from high school to college. It's not really about the next 4 years. It's about the next 40 years. What and are you preparing them so that they can have an impact for 40 years? That's the way I would think about it.
That's awesome. That's great. So I'm just going to ask a personal question. Have you ever thought about writing a book about this whole, your process, your life, transformation?
My wife's going to kill me. I have thought a little bit about writing, maybe not about my life and all that stuff. I'm not thinking about that, but I do think this is a passion for me, talking about recruiting and NIL. So we may get to a point where we wrap it all up and put it into a book, but I haven't done that yet. So I've thought about it, but I have not acted on it.
Yeah. Well, part of your life is about it, because you went to recruiting, understood it, successful TCU, Southern Nazarene, minor league baseball. And then you're brilliant at data analytics. So
I don't know if brilliant's the right word, but I understand it, and I understand enough tech and social media and certainly sports, and you put it all together. It's kind of a recipe that not everybody. It's kind of a unique skill set. So I guess I'd look at it that way. I don't know if certainly not. I'm certainly not getting a Nobel Peace Prize or any kind of big global award. But in the niche that I like to play in, I like to think I do a pretty decent job.
Yeah. My friend Colt asked, "How does this guy sleep? Do you sleep? How often?"
I'm a pretty much a creature of habit. I tell my kids I turn into a pumpkin about 10:30. Between 10:30 and 11. Yeah. It's night time for Bryan. Yeah. And then I'm usually up between 6 and 6:30.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I get a run in, and I got 5 miles in this morning. So, I'll get a run in and get the day started. It's a little different now because kids are out of school, so they're sleeping. But if they were in school, I'm trying to shuttle the little one to school and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it makes for busy days. That's for sure. It's a little busier now just because we're in the process as we launch and get things out of the ground. But we've got it to a pretty manageable spot for sure.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
Yeah.
If it's enjoyable, you figure out a way to kind of manage it.
True. That's true. I'm going to ask you for my own knowledge advice is how I'm approaching you. It's like, man, hey, Bryan, I want to go and play collegiate ball somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got this Twitter account or this Instagram account. Do you have any ideas on how I should run my social media?
Yeah, social media can be a dark place some days, and some days it's a bright, shining star. The first thing I would tell people is, be true to who you are. Don't be fake. A lot of what you see on social media is not real life. It's only the good stuff. Mm-hmm. Nobody puts the day they stub their toe.
Yeah.
They don't put that on, the gram, right? So I think that, or they shouldn't. But my point is that, don't believe everything you see. Number one, be true to who you are. Number three, have an open dialogue with your parents. You should have we tell kids, have a shared email account so that you can set up, social profiles that your parents can see, or if not, you need to have an open door policy so that your parents can always look at your social media, because you're conducting the private messages with adults and you may not be prepared to have those conversations. Then the last thing I'd say is really stay away from kind of the hot woke topics. I just stay away from them. Sure. Honestly, just don't even engage. There are, right now there's just a lot of different topics on all sorts of the political spectrum right now. Yeah. I think you're better off just staying away from them. You can have an opinion. I'm not saying don't have an opinion, but it probably doesn't benefit you in the case of recruiting to go really into, advocating that. And the same thing that I just said for recruit, I would tell the parents the same thing, even times 10. Don't gripe about officials. Be smart with how you praise your child. Don't be over the top with your gushing. Your kid's not perfect. Don't gripe about the media for not covering them. Just because everybody's watching all of that stuff. My kid's getting slept on. No, that doesn't happen anymore. Everyone knows all these kids, right? So I would just you just have to be really smart and careful. But if you do it the right way, it can become a really useful business tool.
Yeah.
So I always try to get people to think about it differently, which is use it for empowerment, right? This comes back to the fundamentals of why we created Recruit Route and Elite, is around education and then empowerment. In the case of social media, if you're empowered to do it right, just like a phone call and a text and so forth, a tweet or a post on your story on Instagram, those can be powerful, but you got to be smart with it.
Man, I could see where, to your point, a great point, it could be used as a great business tool to drive revenue, to drive your brand. I could also see it where the opposite could be very well true, where parents are so competitive and these kids become so competitive with the NIL, right? NIL. It's like, man, it could become where it's like, that's all I'm focused on is trying to earn that dollar instead of being with my team.
Yeah. But again, the focus should be keep the priority the priority.
Right.
Team, development, academics, character, faith.
Yeah.
Focus on that. This stuff will take care of itself if you do this really well.
Yeah. So that's why they need to get in touch with you.
Well, sometimes it's just they need another voice telling them what their parents or coaches are saying. A lot of times I'll have a mom or dad say, I think you're probably going to say this to little Johnny. And I'm like, yeah. And you go, okay, good. That's why we got you.
Yeah.
Because you're just reinforcing it. And because we've basically outsourced that piece of it to you, they trust you.
It's so interesting how that happens.
Yeah.
Right?
It's crazy sometimes.
It happens to me when I'm a coach all the time.
Yep.
It's like,
you can tell your kids something over and over and over, and then the youth pastor tells them the same thing.
Sure.
It's like, man, that was such a great service, Mom, Dad. I'm like, we told you that. Whatever it is, right? So it's like, yeah, so it happens all the time. That's just how the world works.
Man.
That's how kids work.
Man. What's the next 5 years in your mind look like to you as far as personal and recruit route?
Well, I mean, our kids are going to be entering some interesting stages in our lives. I'll have a daughter that'll be graduating and then going to college, and then I'll have another daughter that's going to high school, middle school and high school. And so those are just exciting life moments, lots of big celebrations and ebbs and flows that go with that critical juncture of them becoming young women. So that's certainly exciting. There'll probably be a few tears shed for my wife and I through all of that. But it's exciting just to pour into them and be intentional about being parents with them. And so that certainly is awesome and like a huge priority. And just building them up in their faith in God. And, personally, we're just continuing trying to just better ourselves, my wife and I, and I'm married an awesome woman that challenges me every day. We probably both have a wife who collectively kicks us in the butt, and we need that. And then I think from a business perspective, we want to reach thousands of kids, right? Thousands and thousands of kids. And so Recruit Route is designed to hit a lot of kids in lots of different places all over the world and country. And then, but not lose sight of kind of how we were started, which was, working in a high touch manner with families and being able to balance that. And so if we can get this in a spot where we've done that, then, that's exciting. That becomes a really interesting business model that, that we can make some interesting decisions off of. So it'd be interesting to see how this kind of plays out. We're at year 5 of our business. I wanted to get this to a point where it was like a self-sustaining kind of income replacement kind of business in 10 years. So in 5 years, we would be at that spot. So we'll see if we can go make it happen in the next 5 years. We'll see. We got a long ways to go to do that, but we're putting the pieces together to try to get there.
Yeah.
And, we wanted to kind of just when we started this 5 years ago, we didn't really know what we wanted to do when we grew up. I didn't. And so I didn't have a business plan or anything. Now we're starting to get to where it's like, okay, I've kind of gotten smarter about what do I really want to do? What are my passions?
Yeah.
How do we want to build it? How do we create it into more of as a service business? And so part of that is it was an opportunity for me to learn on the job as an entrepreneur as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that was a cool way to do it. So for me, at least it worked. So it'll be interesting to see. So yes, halfway to where we want to try to get.
That's going to be awesome, man. You talk about reaching thousands of kids as a business model. I look at it not only as a business model, but it's a life model too.
Yeah, I hope so.
With your words and your mindset. Yeah. That's undefeated right there.
Yeah, well, we're trying. The hard part is how do you take that kind of undefeated mentality, right? That and digitally deliver that. That's hard. So that's the trick that we're trying to work through right now, because when I meet with a kid, like my passion and all that stuff kind of can come out. Yeah. How do I do that in a digital delivery? So we're working on that. So I'll report back. We need to do another podcast, and we'll talk about what that evolution looks like. So that's the tricky part now, is how do we do that in a way that we can reach a lot of people, but still be intentional about the message that we're trying to deliver.
Testimonials from some of your student athletes.
Yeah.
Would be cool.
Yep. And we've got some of that.
And you have some of that on your website.
Yeah, we got some of that. We just got to do more of that for sure.
Yeah.
Yep.
That'd be great, man. Well, dude, I'm proud of you. I'm excited to be here listening to these stories, and your growth has been phenomenal, just even over the last 2 years.
Yeah. It's been fun, man. I mean, good kids and good parents attract other good kids and other parents.
Yeah. And
so if we can capitalize on that and now take it to the next level and reach a whole new set of kids all over the country, that's exciting. So we're thrilled with where Recruit Route and Recruit Route Elite are going, and that'll be fun, man. It's sometimes the market kind of comes to you a little bit. This time, I think we're kind of meeting it in the middle, so that's kind of a cool thing. So we're trying to capitalize on it for sure.
Yeah. One thing I'll add before we roll out: great leaders, great businessmen, great thinkers attract the great kids and the great parents. So well done for you, brother.
Thank you, man.
I appreciate your time, man.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank